Welcome back to the Fear
and Beer podcast,
where we discuss all things Halloween Horror Nights, horror movies,
and just a little bit of beer.
I'm Nick.
And I'm Seamus.
Like scary movies.
Uh-huh.
Here's Johnny.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Did you miss me?
Aren't you drinking? I never drink. Why?
Before we get into tonight's episode, we want to remind all of those listening on Apple Podcasts to drop us a 5-star review. It helps us grow as a podcast and build our audience. If you're listening on Spotify or any other platform, follow us, and don't forget to share with friends and family who might have a little bit of the strange in them as well.
And while you're on those socials, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, be sure to find us, Fear and Beer Pod. Give us a like, share, and you can always message us. We love to interact with all you guys. All right, 4 weeks left until HHN. 4 weeks?
1 month away.
We're almost there. We are very close. And we are, again, the first of the month, first episode of the month. We're going to jump back into our killer reviews. We haven't done these in a little bit. So tonight, obviously, we're going to be hitting The Black Phone, another part of that Blumhouse Horrors maze that they're going to... Well, not maze. I can't say maze. House.
Yeah, you were just talking about... Yeah.
Their house.
That's house.
It's
probably one of those, like, can't say maze because it's like protected word or something like that from some other event, but the Horrors of Blumhouse.
The Horrors of Blumhouse. So we did Freaky a couple months ago.
We did review Freaky.
We're going to jump into the Black Phone tonight so we can kind of go into that part. And then we'll kind of talk about what we think this will work as the maze again. Oh, I said it again. Jesus Christ. The house.
I got you talking about another place.
No.
So now you're thinking, oh, crap.
It's the word of the day. We'll kind of go into it and see how these different scenes from the movie could play into the possible bringing into the house. We know that this house is going to be split between the two, so it's not going to be a full-on house. So I'm curious to see what parts of this get adapted into the house. So we're going to go through that scene by scene. 2 big announcements. I know I teased it earlier. One has already been out there. We are now a part of Dark Universe. It's like a horror network. They promote different... If you're looking for any horror movie news related stuff like that, podcasts and stuff like that, you can head over to there. We're part of their team now. So be sure to check out Dark Universe. Pretty cool little group of collections of people just like us into the horror and stuff like that. We are the only Horror Nights podcast that is put out through onto their site and stuff like that. So pretty cool stuff. And then the other big news, we're going to drop at the end for you, so you got to listen to the whole episode.
You did him like that.
Evil, but it is...
You did him like that.
Very, very exciting stuff. Slightly nerve-wracking. We got a lot of work to do, that's for sure, but... I
mean, to be fair,
I think y'all are going to love it.
It is your idea.
It is my crazy
you're putting the stress
idea.
On yourself.
It is my crazy, ridiculous idea that if it pans out correctly, which somehow it has been panning out, for us so far. So this one is going to be another test of that. But yeah, we're doing Black Phone tonight. So let's jump into some beer before we get into that. We got a couple different types. We did not really tie these in, I'm sure. Oh, well, this one kind of ties in. So this is Terrapin, the Hopsecutioner, from Athens, Georgia. I mean,
kind of.
The little turtle's wearing a mask.
Yeah, I mean,
he's wearing a black mask.
Yeah, and I get Voodoo Ranger, which we've had before on the podcast, I think. Definitely had New Belgium before. Just, everybody knows the little skeleton guy on Voodoo Ranger. At least I think you probably do.
You should.
One of those, like, widely distributed craft beers. But, I don't know, his face kind of looks like the mask a little bit in the movie.
He's got something. We got something. Well, we got some beers.
But we're getting pretty bad at the whole, like, matching beers up to the episode.
This whole last month of HHN is going to be... is rough, just trying to scramble to find stuff, having time to go over and grab new stuff every couple of weeks or so. But I swear we will get onto a streak at some point once we get going into the season. But these aren't crazy beers. I don't think we really have to go in depth as to what styles and what tastes and stuff. These are pretty mainstream beers. This is an IPA. I expect it to be just a general IPA. I'm not expecting anything crazy. These aren't. I don't see the independent brew. I think these are more.
I mean, it is.
It's a small. Terrapin is a smaller,
craft, like macro, like small brewery type deal. They're obviously bigger than other like microbrews, but I don't know. I don't know if they have the symbol on it that like denotes that
The
they're
independent, yeah. Yep.
anymore. But I don't know. It's good stuff. I mean,
It smells like an IPA.
For what we call a shelfie,
Mm-hmm.
they're good shelfies. So if you're looking for like something quick and easy, but you don't want the typical macro light beer,
Yeah.
find something like this, Voodoo Ranger from New Belgium. Hopsecution or something from Terrapin's really good. So, and I believe they're distributing those everywhere too.
You can generally find these in a lot of.
Yeah.
I feel like I see
just know,
Terrapin
like,
a lot at Publix.
For a while, like in the northeast didn't get as much of that, but I think they've started distributing a little bit more. So you should be able to find it. So check them out. We have talked about Black Phone in the past, so those that might get confused,
Yep,
we did a couple episodes ago. We did talk about it a little bit.
When they announced the house,
we didn't really go too much in depth in the movie. We kind of gave our thoughts on it, but we're gonna break the movie down. Obviously, most of you have probably seen it already. If you haven't, this is
Spoilers.
Again, spoiler warning. We don't hold back.
We're
if
talking.
you listen to Fear and Beer, you know we don't hold back on spoilers.
Yep.
We've both seen this movie. I obviously brought the inspiration to it, so we can talk about that a little bit as well. So we'll just kind of break it down, give you some facts. I'm sure he's got plenty of factoids.
I got a little bit, a couple things here and there.
Brain,
yeah.
But honestly, the last time I saw this was in the theaters a couple weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago. So, movie's not quite hazy, but it's getting there. So I'm glad we're doing this now and not waiting.
So let's fire this up behind us. Also, if you're just noticing, Seamus did have a growth spurt.
Yeah, I'm a little bit taller. I finally hit my growth spurt.
At some point, we will get chairs that actually fit.
You'll see how tall I am.
But we did get a table, so you can see we're taking steps in the right direction.
I guess we probably should get a shout out Bert from
Art of Partying.
Art of Partying, because he found us on Facebook. So shout out Bert.
All right, so let's get into this. So the Black Phone, new movie, 2021 horror thriller. This was directed by Scott Derrickson, who you should probably remember from the first Doctor Strange, Sinister, The Exorcism of Emily Rose. This was written by Scott Derrickson and C. Robert Cargill, who they both worked together previously on Sinister.
Yep.
And this is based, again, on the short story written by Joe Hill, who is the son of Stephen King. Yep.
I don't know if he's the oldest son. Yeah, I think he is. I think Owen is his youngest. But either way, yes, he is Joseph Hillstrom King is his full name, but he goes by Joe Hill as his pen name, which for obvious reasons.
Yeah,
it's based off of the short story. It's not one of those deals where he came in kind of like his dad does in a lot of stuff, or did at least at one point, and wrote a lot of the screenplay for the movie. This is based off the short story, but like we said in the other episode, or like I said in the other episode, they are still quite different between the short story and the movie. Judging from the fact that the short story is like 20 pages long, this movie's an hour and 40 minutes, so they had to stretch it a little bit to make it work. So it's definitely its own property for sure.
Yep. This was made. It has $16 or $18 million budget, and end up right now in the box office $143.7 million.
Pretty profitable.
Good turnaround. So this was
return.
Originally shown, I think, previews of it at least at San Diego Comic-Con a couple years ago. And they did do a small release, and based off of what the audience was saying, they thought that it merited a full theatrical release. So they did push the date a little bit so that way they could put it into more theaters, and I think they made the right call on that. So this is starring Mason Thames as Finney. I tried to look up his IMDb. He's young. He obviously hasn't been in a lot.
Complete one.
No. We have who I think is the absolute showstopper in this thing, and that is Madeline McGraw as Gwen.
Yeah, Gwen was great.
That
little girl can act her ass off.
She takes this thing.
She is, but
I'm sure she
is.
Ass
off. We obviously know the one scene. We'll get to it as we go through the movie.
Yeah.
That I think she might.
Probably my favorite scenes.
Yeah,
she got two of them, or three of them actually.
She's got a few of them. We'll get to them, but yeah, she was great. And then I'm sure you're gonna get to them, so I'll let you go. But
and then
at least one other person that I'm super on high
before we get to him though, but I did read that Madeline McGraw, they signed her on, but she was working on another project at the time. So they ended up pushing.
Project?
Yeah, probably.
High school project?
Probably. They ended up pushing the entire production just so that she could continue into this movie.
Oh, good.
It
was a smart idea.
Yeah.
A smart move. I don't know if they could have found anybody else that would have played the role as good as she did.
No chance. So. And then also this movie was going to take a little bit of a time to come too, because at the time Scott Derrickson was attached for Doctor Strange 2, Multiverse of Madness, but because of creative differences, he left the project. He stayed on, obviously, as a executive producer, but then he was able to jump right into this project, so we got it a little bit earlier than we were anticipating. And then lastly, I had for my cast list, I kept it small, but that's Ethan Hawke as the Grabber, who at first didn't want to take this role because he didn't. I guess he said he didn't want to be known as a villain, but then he realized he was 50 and like he's already known for so much stuff, and he's like, you know what, it's not too bad being known. And then he ended up taking this, which is funny too, because then he ended up being the villain from Moon Knight. So he's just been banging out two badass villain roles in the last year or so.
I do want to mention at least one more person.
And yeah, I think I know who you mean.
So,
you talking about Max?
No, the father.
Oh yeah, I didn't get his name.
So the only reason I want to bring him up because it took me a minute to realize who he was, and I think he was, to use the parlance of the young kids these days, low key one of the better actors in this movie, one of the better roles.
He played a giant piece of shit.
Yeah, he played a giant piece of shit.
Very well.
But it was convincing, and it was it felt real and really
Yeah,
raw. And we'll
it
get
was
to the
authentic.
scenes that he was in that make me say that. But his name's Jeremy Davies. I didn't recognize who he was until I went home, looked him up, and he's Corporal Upham from Saving Private Ryan.
Oh, okay.
Which, if you remember from that movie, he is the dude that let his buddy get stabbed in the heart because he's a baby. He was a baby. Corporal Upham, we're still mad at you, even 20
You failed
years
us.
on.
You failed us.
You failed your squad. But no, I'm kidding. But Jeremy Davies playing the father. I don't know if they gave him a name. If it's just dad, like just the character's dad. I forget if they gave him a first name or not.
All they referred to as like daddy or father.
Yeah,
or
so
whatever.
I just think the three of them in the scenes they were together were just top notch and completely unexpected for me. Anyways,
it's a
I
rough
kind of
dynamic.
expected a Stranger Things type, like kids with like the main go here. Like it was about the kids and the bad guy. But I think the other adult characters really kind of brought more to the story.
Yeah, they did. So, quick little synopsis of this movie, if you haven't heard about it. After being abducted by a child killer and locked in a soundproof basement, a 13-year-old boy starts receiving calls on a disconnected phone from the killer's previous victims.
Ghosts.
One thing I did notice right when this movie kicked off, the Blumhouse Pictures logo debuted, and it was their first time using their new like logo or whatever, and it was kind of like a zoom through multiple film references. We saw
they went Marvel on us,
Michael Myers outside. You saw a girl with a purge mask.
Oh, I think well, I remember that now. That's the first time they
that's
used
the first
that?
time they used that one.
Okay, because like I think wasn't the original one was like.
It was like the chair in the corner of the room, and then there was like a kid standing against the wall that was kind of sinister-ish. But we'll get into that. So we start out the movie North Denver, 1978. And we start out by meeting our mate and protagonist, Finney, playing baseball as the pitcher. He goes up on a quick 0-2 on the strike count, and in a quick glance to one of the girls from his class, he puts one down the middle, and a character that we'll now learn as Bruce takes him fucking yabo and hits a home run and beats the team. So we see right from the get-go that Finn is just kind of like, I don't want to say a loser, but like he's not the kid hitting the home run.
No, but I think what's cool is it does kind of like immediately twist on its head a little bit. Again, it initially gives you that whole like, oh, Bruce is the jock who's gonna treat him like crap.
Yeah.
But it kind of twists that quickly on its head, like almost immediately.
Yeah.
When he walks up to him, he's like, "Hey man, like you threw heat," or I forget what he says.
He says so. They're meeting in the little handshake line, and he tells him that his arm is mint.
Yeah. So
and that will come back to play in a little bit.
Yeah. So that's kind of foreshadowing, obviously, but it's also kind of cool where it's like, oh, so he's not a dickhead. He's just,
he's just good.
Athlete.
He's just
athletes,
good,
man. But that was.
Yeah, so then we get hit with Free Ride by Edgar Winter. Classic.
Yes.
Classic for the late 70s.
Great soundtrack, too.
Yeah, the soundtrack definitely nailed the late 70s. But yeah, Bruce is riding around town with his bike, waving to girls, and we see all of a sudden a black van come around a corner, and it starts to slowly fade, and then it cuts to the opening credits. And it's like an overlaid... And it's an overlay of like the town and what's been going on, and not too in depth, but it's giving you like there's blood, there's missing children posters, and it has that sinister vibe, which obviously makes sense with it being Scott Derrickson. It has like that.
Movie has a sinister vibe.
It's like actual. It's film reel is the way that the edit looks. So it kind of gives you a little, catches you up to speed.
The old home movie type thing.
Yeah. So now we're back at Finn's house, and we see how awesome his dirtbag father is.
Yes.
Finn's just trying to drink some cereal or eat some cereal, and the dad just looks. He's just like, "Could you slurp that any louder? I don't think they could hear you any over in Boulder or whatever he said."
So I will say this: I think that the first scene we're introduced to the family. I thought that maybe I was like, all right, so this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna make it like super stereotypical, like dad's gonna be just a drunk asshole.
Mm-hmm.
So this first scene I wasn't as blown away by.
Yeah,
but as the movie progresses, it does get better, at least for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, we meet the dad for the first time.
Yeah, who wasn't at the baseball game.
Wasn't at the baseball game, which they didn't really play on at all. They didn't really make a big deal about that because they could have been like, oh look, he's looking for his dad, and his dad's not
and he
there.
wasn't. Yeah,
he
I think
he was just looking at the hot girl.
Yeah, at this point, I think he's used to his dad not being there.
Let me rephrase that. He's looking for the girl he has a crush on in school. Sorry,
his
I know that high school,
future lab partner.
Weird and old, but as a high schooler,
that was what he was idolizing.
Probably who he was crushing on.
So we're then formally introduced to the sister, Gwen, who accidentally slams the toaster, and their dad obviously slams the newspaper down. She gives the whole, "Oh, I'm so sorry, Dad." Oh, they know this is a common occurrence for them. They know how to react when Dad's being hungover.
Nursing a hangover.
Yeah, everyone's been there. So now Finn and Gwen are kind of walking to school, and they see a note, and they make note that there's a new poster up. Gwen says that she thinks that they'll find them, but just not the way they want to find them, which is kind of dark and ominous for like the younger sister to say. And Finn kind of seemed off-put by this comment, and as they walk past, we see a poster, and on the poster is Bruce, the kid that had just hit that home run. So Finn obviously, whether he knew him or not, he knew of the kid. I don't know if they were friends or not, but he knew the kid. We are now introduced on the walk, who I put in my notes, the best character, who has to put up a fight with Gwen, because Gwen steals the show, but this kid is a badass, and that's Robin.
Yeah.
So Robin's got the whole like Karate Kid aesthetic going. He's got like the bandana, the like little 70s like flared out jeans or whatever. He's got the cutoffs, and then there's this little dickhead kid, Moose, that clearly has been picking on him. He's the alpha male, the bigger kid, obviously picking on the kids. He says something about him being a beaner, and then he says like, say that to my face, come on up. And then finally Moose goes at him. Robin kind of sideswipes him. They tussle, whatever. There's a whole crowd of kids watching them. Finn's watching. And then Robin ends up getting on top and just beating the shit out of this kid. Just relentlessly smashing this kid in the face until he's just blood everywhere. And even when he gets to the point of where he should stop, he does not stop. I don't know how this Moose kid is alive, because that kid...
he railed.
Railed on him. If you break your nose and like those parts go into your brain, like Robin could have killed this kid. But Finn pulls Gwen away to continue walking to school because he didn't want to see that. The sister, Gwen, who was just like, "Oh, you don't want to see that? That's awesome. Like, that kid's an asshole. He deserved it. Like, remember last year he beat you up?" And he's just like, "I know, but nobody deserves that," because he was getting his shit rocked.
Well, you shouldn't be a racist little shit.
Yeah, right.
You wouldn't get punched in the nose.
You little fat fuck.
I mean, sorry, Moose, but don't
had
be
it
a
coming.
fucking little dickhead. Wouldn't happen. Plus, you always underestimate the squirrely little guy.
Yeah, right.
Until he beats the hell out of you.
Yeah. They keep walking. They're talking now about what the town or the kids have been calling the grabber. But Finn doesn't want to say his name, almost like Beetlejuice. Like you say it three times and the grabber shows up.
Don't say him,
yeah,
he'll show up.
But he was upset by it. So we're now into school. And then there's more bullies. More school bullies. This whole town is full of bullies.
Isn't every town full of bullies?
I guess. But, man, these kids are the kids that should be bullied.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the three that
they picked are like...
Finn are like, what the hell?
They seem like they're they're like the middle tier of bullies. Like, they're not the top bully, but they're like...
Yeah, they're the kids that, like, get bullied, but they have to find someone smaller and weaker
to bully them. Yeah,
so like, they can feel better about themselves.
It's like, Finn is here, those bullies are here, and, like, Robin's up here, and Moose is over here somewhere. Like, But they follow him into the bathroom. He tries to hide in the stall, and they end up not pulling him out, but they're calling out to him. They're like, "Oh, you didn't see the sign? This is the boys' room. What are you doing in here?" "Oh, it's so fucking funny. It's hilarious." But just at that point where they kind of start to move in on him, Robin comes in. Yep. Good old fucking Robin walks right to them, pushes through them, goes right over to the sink to start washing his bloody hands off, and without even just says, "Hey, what's up, Finn?" Clearly they're friends. And he's like, "Man, Moose has some sharp teeth. My knuckles have been bleeding all day." And then he kind of, looks over to the other kids. He's asking, Finn. He's like, "Everything good?" And as the bullies, those other bullies, start to move out, and he's like, "Wait a second. You fuck with him, and then I'll fuck with you." And then he tells them, "Okay, now you can go." And I was like, "Oh, Robin is the man. He's like a UFC fighter guy, that stands up for bullies in this little 12-year-old kid. He's just embodied by it."
Yeah.
But then he does tell, once they're gone, he does tell Finn that someday he's gonna have to stand up for himself. At some point. He said Robin made a little comment too that I thought was funny. He's just like, he was just gonna push him around and kind of ruffle Moose up a little bit, but then there was a crowd there, and in that situation you got to draw blood to make your point. And he's like, I just had to do it for the crowd. But they talk a little bit about how Robin just saw a Texas Chainsaw Massacre with his uncle, so this kid is he'd be on this podcast if he was real.
He'd be a listener if he was there.
We do find out that Finn tutors Robin in math. He can't get another F, yada yada, but they do have a prior connection, not just Robin being a good guy and sticking up for a random kid being bullied. They are friends. Now we are coming up to, might be my favorite scene. It's Gwen. She gets pulled into the principal's office.
Oh, to speak with the cops?
Yep, yeah. And there's two police officers there.
This is where she was she shines.
Oh, this is
so good.
She asks, or the police ask her if she was friends with Amy Yamada, who is Bruce's sister. She says, yeah. And then it comes to find out that apparently Gwen had told Amy she had a dream about her brother who was taken. There was a man who had black balloons in a van that took him, and this is where the police kind of found interest. They revealed that information has never been released. So either they have a leak in their facilities, and then this is where Gwen kind of chimes in, or what? I'm the grabber. And then with the line is, they go back and forth about how these kids that have been taken are much bigger than her. How could they even think this? But the line is, she goes, "Yeah, I guess I'm the grabber. You dumb fucking fart knockers." This is where the principal is like, "Gwen, stop." She's like, yeah, I get it. But
Scott Derrickson either has kids or a nephew or a niece,
yeah.
And they gave him that line.
Oh, I love
100%.
it. But the way she just goes about it so unapologetically, so
great.
to them,
yeah.
It's just, she nails the delivery perfect. But she did kind of calm down and say that sometimes she has dreams, and sometimes those dreams are right. So now
it's kind of giving away that she's definitely got something supernatural about her.
Yeah. Which isn't part of the book, is it? Or you can chime in on that part.
I mean, we haven't really talked about the short story, so it is referenced, but it is so loosely referenced that it's hard. You might miss it if you're not looking for it, I guess. There is a couple paragraphs in it that kind of talk about how his sister ends up on the street of the house that he's on, and she doesn't know how she ended up on the street. So it kind of goes into it a little bit, but it's not anything that's dwelled on by any means.
Yeah.
But you can tell that because, again, like we said before, they had to drag out, this is an hour and 40-minute movie. They played up that a little bit more.
Yeah.
Kind of gave it more life in the movie, which I think is...
They repurposed it to fit into the...
But they didn't do it in a bad
bit.
way. I think it's fine. I think if they had done it any more, if they had gone into it way too much, I would have been like, all right, you're explaining too much. It's better that it's just something that happens to her.
Yeah.
She just happens to have dreams and she can see things ahead. And I was fine with the whole mother thing too. And we'll get to some of that, I'm sure. But so I'm kind of fine with how they did it. But the short story doesn't have it quite as much as the movie does.
So school's over, and Gwen and Finn are walking home. Gwen says that she's going to stay at Susie's because it's Friday. So obviously that means Dad's going to be super drunk.
He's going to be sauced.
Super drunk. So she tells him that, take care of Dad or whatever. She'll be back in the morning. So we go home. Obviously Dad's passed out. Finn grabs some ice cream and watches a horror movie alone. And while he's doing that, he clutches he's got like a little rocket pen that has a light on it.
Which is also kind of foreshadowing.
A little foreshadowing. That's almost like a comfort item for him. If he was on Survivor, he would bring that as his comfort item. But yeah, so he's passed out. So when we flash forward to the next morning, which is the scene that had just played above us, Finn's woken up by Gwen screaming in the other room. Apparently, the cops had showed up at the father's work, and he was beating the shit out of her with a belt. Ooh. Tough scene. This was a tough scene to get through.
This is probably the hardest scene in many a movie that I've seen. Was not expecting it to be as graphic as it is.
No.
I don't think it's overdone. I think it is definitely hard to watch. It's the hardest scene to watch in the movie. And that includes everything with Ethan Hawke. Everything with Ethan Hawke is just kind of standard abduction type stuff. Mm-hmm. This was tough.
This was a tougher scene to watch than any of the stuff with the grabber.
Yeah, so I mean, my point is, for anybody that ever went through that, like, this might be one of those trigger type scenes for you, because like it's real. It feels real. And you got to remember, it's the 70s. That's when it's based in, and I'm sure at the time
this wasn't really uncommon.
Yeah, it wasn't uncommon to discipline your child with a belt, whether it was a daughter or a son. So obviously we don't do that now, but at the time, I'm sure that was more of a common disciplinary action,
especially from a drunk,
with
single father,
a drunk single father who is constantly sauced.
Yeah,
but it is a hard scene to watch. But I think it's really where she shines.
This scene was just they nailed it.
Yeah, it hurt to watch. It hurt to watch her because like it felt like a real reaction. It wasn't like she was acting. It felt like she was really, there. And who knows, it could have been one of those deals where like he was told to kind of scare her and try to get that emotion out of her. Otherwise, I mean, if that's not the case, she's an unbelievable actress.
Yeah, watch out for her,
and she's going to be great in things as she gets older.
You'll see her a lot more often, I think.
Even Finn too, like Finn
he does good.
Finn
Nothing
does well too.
I mean, I would probably be praising him a lot more if the actress that plays Gwen wasn't in this movie,
right?
Because he's just
I think she just
overshadowed.
She shines or outshines him completely, and that's nothing to say about him in any way negative. It's just I think she was just that much better.
She's just insane.
And everything.
It's hard to keep up with that.
She stole every scene she was in.
Yeah.
So in that one particular, and that's where I think we went from the dad being like stereotypical, just sauce drunk asshole dad, to dad who is dealing with emotions that even he has to learn to control, or he hasn't been able to learn how to control, especially after his wife died. I think we learned that
we do learn later on that the mother
dead,
she killed herself
or whatever. So after adding all that up and seeing the emotion that Davies brought to his role, made it even better. So that's where I was like, oh, okay, so they're actually going to put some effort into building this relationship between the children and their father. And it's not just evil Ethan Hawke abducting kids. Yeah.
So the one thing during this scene that I did like kind of chuckle at was that she grabs his bottle of vodka, and she's like, you hit me again, I'll drop it or whatever. Obviously he lunges at her, she drops it, smashes on the ground, but then he's just like, my $8 bottle of vodka. It's like, oh, you cheap fuck.
Hey, $8 is a lot in the 70s.
All right. But hey man, that's Tito's level. But yeah, so we go through that, and the ending, like, climax of that scene really was him forcing her to say that, like, the whole thing came about because the police showed up at his work.
Correct.
From the talk that they had.
And he knows that
the past or whatever.
So continue. But
he makes her say that her
not
dreams.
Just that, like, he's mad that they showed up at his work. You're supposed to think that. Yeah. But then he kind of elaborates that it's more than just. Yeah, I'm being bothered by police officers.
Yeah, and this is like a breadcrumb scene, I think, because we get the finality of this. We get the culmination of the beginning of this story later on. But in this, he starts to makes her say, like, her dreams are just dreams. Her dreams aren't real. Because that was obviously what the police came by looking for, saying, "Oh, well, your daughter said she had a dream," and blah blah blah.
Right, so it turns out that it's like exactly what happened.
Yeah, set him off. But in the other room, they kind of go down, and I thought this was a very sweet, touching scene that Gwen kind of leans against Finn. Yeah. Finn just visibly angry, but as a scrawny little
But he knows he can't
14-year-old
do
kid, like there's only so much he can do besides kill his dad in his sleep or something,
Right, and
which
I
he
think-
probably should.
But I also think what's cool is it shows it shows that there's a bond between the two characters.
Mm-hmm.
Again, more than we get in the short story, and I'm not trying to compare the two. Like I said, they're very different, but we get more of that. There's more to care about. Like, you obviously care about Finn and you care about his sister because of the relationship the two of them have.
Yeah, you can tell
and
that
that's
they're
shown through when they walk to school and walk home from school.
they're always together. That's their comfort of each other. Then we get another scene now of Robin. And this was a quick little scene that Robin was walking in a back lot somewhere, and a man with a hat and a cape are in the distance, but out of focus, and the footage kind of fades out, and then various phones ring in different houses. Somebody calls Finn's house eventually, and their dad picks up, and he's kind of a little bit shaken and soft-spoken. He hangs up, and he asks Finn if he knew a boy named Robin Aria, and then Finn finishes it for him. He's like, yeah, he's a friend from school. The dad just kind of walks away slowly. So you get that
70s racism.
You get that, you get that tone of like, okay, Robin was the kid that was taken.
Yeah, so Robin was his friend.
Yeah.
Who was seemingly to be business partner.
Yeah.
We'll call him that.
But now the town's out looking for him. Gwen comes into Finn's room and kind of offers her condolences, I guess, and she says that Robin was his friend, and then Finn's like, "Don't say that. Robin is my friend.
Yeah.
He's
He's not dead. Don't say that.
Yeah, he asks Gwen to do the dream thing, but apparently it doesn't work that way because he wanted to get some hints or whatever.
Like,
he knows about it clearly.
Yeah.
Gwen goes off to her room and opens up her little dollhouse and takes out a cross and some other little praying materials.
She's just screaming against about God and stuff.
She starts asking Jesus for his help and letting her have a dream that would help her find Finn's friend. So, like, there's multiple, like, stories, I think, that are layered throughout this. There's, you have Gwen and her father's relationship, which starts out extremely rocky. You have that little part where he wants her to say dreams aren't real, and then we get to the next part of it. There's also this other relationship with Gwen and Jesus, which is fantastic, because we'll see various points of that where right now she's simply just asking for Jesus for help, nicely. I can't say that she asks nicely again, but she does again. But the next morning the cops show up to Finn's house and her father opens the door, obviously mad, but they assure him that their daughter had nothing to do with this. But it's kind of a silent scene, and we see Gwen sitting there with the cops, but it doesn't seem like she's talking now. I think that her father had at that point gotten her head. Her dreams are just dreams. Yeah. None of this is real. So the cops were really searching for nothing at that point. We cut to, again, another scene that Gwen absolutely steals, but slow motion. Finn's getting chased by the bullies now because Robin's not there to help him. But then Gwen comes in like a fucking firecracker. She comes in with a rock. And she yells out, "You fucking cocksucking cowards," and smashes one of these kids right in the head with a rock. Yeah. And then she looks at this other one, another one of the kids, and go, "Fuck you too, you ugly face." Fuck you too, ugly ass face, and throws the rock at him. She rushes at him, but then the kid turns it into a Randy Orton power slam.
And he beats the shit out of her.
He kicks her a bunch, and then she kind of crawls up next to the kid on the fence who got hit in the head with the rock, who is gushing, not even out of it. Blood is pouring out of this. The Moose and this kid are probably dead.
You would think so,
because we never hear anything about this kid again. You never see him again. You don't hear anything about this kid. Was just gushing blood. You don't have cell phones in the 70s. No one's calling the hospital. Nope. So who knows what happened to this kid?
Rotary phones.
I think Gwen killed a kid. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
But
between Robin and Gwen, we've got at least 2 murders not committed by the.
Yeah, we have 2 murders already. We're in class now, school, for Finn, and he's obviously kind of ruffled up a little bit, and they have to select a lab partner. And then the girl Donna, who is the girl from his crush, the baseball game, everyone kind of selects a partner, and it's one of those scenes where, of course this, the loser kid got left out. But then Donna comes in and asks to be partners or whatever, and she tells him that those kids are dicks. And he's like, what are you talking about? She's like everyone knows about this. Those kids are assholes. Your sister's cool though. And she's like, I wish me and my brother had the same connection that you and your sister do. So that was a nice little scene that it's not just a on to school thing. It's not an at home thing. They truly are a bonded pair. So they're now leaving school, Gwen and Finn, and they're walking again. It must be Friday again because she says that she's going to, I think it was Susie's again, and then Finn's like, okay, all right, we'll talk to you, whatever, see you. So Finn starts to walk alone, and then here comes Ethan Hawke, who is stumbling and fumbling and dropping eggs.
Full on Ethan Hawke.
Yep, this is his first introduction.
Because before it's like you see
it's
the
just
man,
images.
you see like distance type thing, but now we actually get full on Ethan Hawke.
So he fumbles, he drops some eggs on the ground, very goofy, like oh shucks, like oh man, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
He tells him that he's a part-time magician. He asks him if he wants to see a trick, and as Finn goes closer, he can see through the back of the van, and he goes, "Are those black balloons?" And then Ethan Hawke says, "Oh yeah, they are." He opens it, takes the balloons out, and puts them in front of Finn. And obviously there's a struggle there, but that's how he's using the balloons. He's using the balloons to kind of
he's just
cover. It's his cover.
What he's gonna do.
So he sprays. I don't think we ever get an answer what it is.
So it's just some sort of aerosol.
Yeah.
That knocks him out. It's described in the short story as being like bitter tasting. Mm-hmm. So it's probably some sort of like canned air or something like that. But like it's enough that will obviously knock him out.
Mm-hmm.
But who knows? All we need to know is that it's the crazy go-go juice that knocks the kids out that he uses to abduct them. Mm-hmm. The great thing about this movie, and again, I think this scene also kind of shows it, is that there's no mystery as to who the bad guy is. Like
it's no whodunit in that
there's
sense.
no whodunit. There's no, the audience kind of has to figure out what's going on. The whole point of the movie, the whole story is that, you've got a kid who's growing up, learning to stand up for himself, and his family unit, which is dysfunctional, and you've
say the least,
right? And then you've got a bad guy that's a pretty generic bad guy, I guess you'd say. The masks obviously make him unique, but like
there's not much to him. He's not super
to
powered.
He drives around in a black van like pretty much every child kidnapper ever does. I mean, remember, at this point in time, don't ever drive a van. Just don't even buy one. Unless you're a soccer mom, you need a minivan.
And
or something
you need
like that.
1,000 of them for your 27 children.
Yeah, don't get a panel van. Even if you work in a business or you own a business,
even if you sell vans, don't
sell vans because it just gives off child kidnapper.
Yeah.
But yeah, just all joking aside, it's very just simple and by the numbers, but it works because of that. Like we don't give us too much explanation. We don't need any of that. Just we know that he's bad. He's going to abduct Finn, and let's see what happens after this point.
Yeah. So before he's not
wearing a mask, is he, in this scene? I don't think he is.
No, he's not. He has, I think, his face painted though with white, so it's kind of white,
super white.
So it fits his old magician scheme or whatever. Right. But before Finn does get completely knocked out, he does stab Ethan Hawke or cuts his arm up and stuff like that. But we're now back at the Grabber's basement with him carrying Finn, and now he has the full devil mask. So it does start out though with like. He does wear an entire mask covering everything.
It changes.
And it does change to show
the
mood, or he does start revealing more about himself.
And it's surprisingly subtle for something that's very out in the open. And when I mean subtle, I mean like they don't draw a ton of attention to it.
Yeah.
Like it's for the audience to notice, and it's obviously noticeable, but it's still in a way subtle, I guess is my point. Like it's in a way it changes and you go, wait, something's different. Then it's his face. His face changed, and like, I think it's one of those things where like we're not going to draw attention to it, but we want you to notice it. And I think it's really cool. There's no rhyme or reason. There's no explanation.
They don't tell you why
he does that. Why does the mask change? It just does, and I think that I think it's great. Mm-hmm. I will admit, at least the first mask. I think it's the first mask is very Bagul-ish. Mm-hmm. And
especially with his long hair.
Yeah, so like it's the one thing I was kind of like, oh, really? Like,
yeah, are we just jacking that?
Yeah, we just jacking the other movie that Derrickson did. There is a nice little Easter egg. I think it's an Easter egg we'll point out at the end, but at least the first mask to me comes off very Bagul, but it gets progressively better, changes, and I love how it's like at 1 minute it might just be the bottom half.
Yeah, sometimes it's just the top. Yeah,
it's really cool how it changes throughout the movie.
But yeah, he's upset that his arm's bleeding. He says he's gonna snap his neck. But then he just later says, "Oh, I was just kidding. I was just
like almost immediately."
But but you really did a number on me. Like, oh boy. Like, yeah, I did a fucking number on you. You're trying to fucking kidnap me, you fucking freak. Fuck you.
Black
Piece of
fucking
shit. Black
balloons.
All the black balloons,
Like,
the black van, your stupid black hat. I
Right.
hate it. I hate all of you.
Shame on you, Finn. You should have known better.
Yeah.
A dude driving around in a black van with black balloons,
Dropping eggs.
dropping
like,
eggs, and talking to little kids.
Yeah.
Probably should run away.
especially in a town that's had children kidnapped.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
Your
he's
age.
obviously the grabber.
Yeah. Just
Right?
run. Don't wait for the black balloons to be like the sign. Like, oh, this weird dude with a black hat
Right.
like pulled out of a van and rolled it up to the back of the street. Like, at that point, I'm gone.
And I think, like, some people may watch this movie and go, "Oh, well, they're just blatantly ripping off like It, or they're blatantly ripping off, not ripping off. I don't want to say ripping off, but like blatantly taking inspiration from guys like John Wayne Gacy and that sort of thing."
Yeah.
But I look at it as less ripping and more using a lot of that as inspiration for it, because remember, he's obviously the author of the short story is Stephen King's son, so it gives off that Stephen King vibe.
Yeah.
Because he writes much like his father does, but I think that was also kind of like a love letter to
Yeah.
Joe's father too from Scott. I think Scott's like a very big fan of both King and Joe Hill.
Yeah.
And I think that was kind of just his love letter to Pennywise and It and all these different things that have been told throughout the pantheon of the Kingiverse and the Hilliverse. So I think that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Back to that scene. The grabber assures him that nothing bad is going to happen here. And he asks if he likes soda, but then he hears a phone ringing in the distance. And I noted that I didn't hear anything. I don't think there was an actual phone in the distance, but he leaves the room and locks the door behind him.
There isn't a noise. He just
He says I think he just says
he hears. Oh, maybe it might ring.
might have been something upstairs.
Again, that's the beauty of this movie is it's so subtle.
Yeah.
A lot of this stuff is subtle, so I think that it may have rang, and he was like, "Oh, do you hear that ringing or whatever?" And
Yeah.
it's like, it throws you off because it's like it's obvious. So why is he acting like?
Yeah.
Well, did you hear that?
Yeah. So it wasn't like the phone. We'll get to the phone, but
Yeah,
it might
it's
have
not
been
the
one
black
upstairs.
phone. It's in the room with them. But
Yeah. But Finn's obviously shaken up. Now he's left alone. He has his pen with him. He gets up and he tries the door, but it's obviously locked. He checks his surroundings. He finds one bathroom with some rugs in it and a black phone on the wall that clearly doesn't work.
Right.
I did notice that there was an Easter egg. You said there was an Easter egg. I found one here too.
I think is it maybe the same one?
So there's a line running
Yes,
through.
the wall.
Yep, the wall, which
Looks
is
like
the
the-
poster of
Yeah, it
Sinister.
looks like the Sinister poster.
So it's very obviously just paying homage.
Shout out to the other movie
Yep.
that they were in. And he
So we're now at Susie's house, and the phone rings, and Susie's mother grabs it and tells Gwen on the phone it's her father. She says on the phone, no, she hasn't seen him since school. Obviously, we know that like this is the scene of her realizing that
references-
he's gone.
She knows that Finn was taken.
So she immediately runs out. She runs home. This scene was pretty heartbreaking watching her because from already maybe 30 minutes into the movie that that's like her saving grace. That's her comfort.
Bond. Yeah, we've talked about it already. And there's just that bond. And I mean, obviously, you've got family. You might have siblings. Like you have a bond with your siblings, and obviously when something like this happens. But she's got that like little sister looking up to big brother, all at the same time trying to be her own person and sometimes better than her brother. But like it's done out of like a respectful and loving way, in the sense that like you're my brother, I'm always going to try to be better than you. But so she's got that bond with him, and you can tell like she doesn't have to really mention. I don't think the mother mentions even his name. I think she just talks about. She just mentions like that. Yeah, she hasn't seen him or whatever, and she just immediately knows that. Oh
Shit.
Christ! Like he was taken.
He's the next one. Yeah.
He was the next victim, or he's gonna be the next victim.
Yeah. So she's back in her room. She's praying again.
Takes off.
Yeah.
Fucking bolts.
Now she's there with the little comfort blanket around her while the dad's talking to the cops and stuff like that. But she's back upstairs praying again, and then we cut to a phone ringing sound, and it goes right to Finn, who wakes up looking towards like the black phone, the phone that's in the corner. He picks it up, and then you hear the grabber's voice, which is kind of like jump cutty, like a little bit of a scare, but he wasn't like blah, blah, blah. He was very soft spoken. He tells him, he's like, that phone doesn't work.
Yeah, the thing
and
about
he was there, but Finn didn't know he was there.
There were no cheap jump scares in this movie.
There was like 3 or 4, and they were earned.
But they were earned,
done
yeah.
well.
They were jump scares that like, again,
Worked.
I've said it before. Like I hate jump scares because they're not scary. They're just alarming. Like they're just they shock you. But when they do it right, so this movie definitely did it right with the few that they had. And I wouldn't call this movie necessarily a straight up horror movie anyways.
It's more thriller.
But it did have that element to it where it was like a thriller, but like had those horror elements. And I think that particular jump scare was good because, like you said, it wasn't like in your face. It was really subtle.
Like, put down the phone, it doesn't work. He's like,
he just kind of
it just doesn't work.
That doesn't work. And then you're like, whoa,
yeah,
shit.
Like, the fuck was that?
Yeah, you jump like Finn jumps because he's not expecting it.
Yeah. But yeah, he says that it hasn't worked since he was a kid and that it's creepy down here or whatever. He says he'll take him home soon, but everything's all fucked up. Which I was like, all right, Ethan Hawke, sure, everything's all fucked up. You're the one stealing kids, but I'm sorry, your day's been inconvenienced. But Finn asks him, this was a good scene because it was kind of showed Finn's smarts a little bit. He asks him, like, if somebody saw something, are they coming? Are the police coming? He's like, if you let me go, like, I won't say anything. Just let me go. And then asks, like, if the police are here, I'm going to scream. They're going to hear me. And then the grabber kind of makes mistakes here. Please come on the screen. The grabber makes a mistake here and says that, no, he won't hear you. Right. And then Finn kind of corrects him. He's he? And then the grabber's like, gets pissed off. He's like, no one will hear you. Like, he made the mistake of letting him know there's more than likely somebody upstairs that doesn't know about this. But he's not going to be able to hear him because the grabber soundproofed this all himself.
Right, so what's cool is that, like, one, it establishes that, like you said, Finn definitely he's got more going on than you think. Mm-hmm. He's not just a helpless victim. It shows that the bad guy is somewhat infallible and can be caught into, in circles if he's not careful. Mm-hmm. But it's also kind of a little bit of a foreshadow, too, to the very end. And I won't give away the ending yet. You're still going through it. But when he says no one will hear you, and there's a reason why he says that.
Yeah.
So...
but he tells him to hang the phone up. He thinks that maybe static electricity makes it go off sometimes, but no one's ever there. And the grabber shuts the door, and Finn starts screaming, but then there's an exterior shot of the basement window showing that it is soundproof. You can't hear him out there. He tries to jump up to the window and can't reach it, and then he kind of ruffles up. He's like, you obviously can't get out that way. Nobody, if you could, somebody already would have. Robin definitely would have done that. And then the phone rings. And he's a little hesitant to pick it up, but then he does, and there's nobody on the line. So a little bit of like sense of like, okay, I kind of see where we're going here. So Finn is sleeping now, and he wakes up and he sees the phone kind of moving around, distorting, and he's
breathing.
Yeah.
So that's actually from the short story. Like that is a specific thing that is described as the phone
like morphing.
Feels like it's breathing, so it looks like it's. So to me, so. Again, being the literary junkie that I am, I think that it kind of represents a heart-shaped box from Poe in a way, because that short story is very much about a man who is hearing a heartbeat at night, doesn't know where it's coming from, can't figure it's driving him nuts, driving him insane. It turns out there's an actual like a heart in a box underneath his floorboards. But to me, it's kind of like where it's like they're taking a Joe Hill in the story and in the movie is taking an inanimate object and making it human in a way.
Yeah, it gives it life.
And there's, again, one other thing there's no explanation for it.
No.
There's no reason to explain it. You don't have to explain it. It's just supernatural. Mm-hmm. Just like, why is there a phone in the basement? Like, that's the other thing.
That's the only thing that's there.
The only thing that's down there.
Besides a mattress and some towel, rugs.
And then, like, on the other side, there's a toilet.
Yeah.
So it's like, obviously, he's converted this into a cell, I would assume.
Yep.
But there is very little explanation for why the phone is breathing, why that's happening. I think other than the fact just to say, hey, there's supernatural shit going on. Just like the characters in the movie, you as the audience are supposed to be confused. We're not going to explain this stuff because you wouldn't know what was going on either at the time. No. If you were there at going through the same situation.
Mm-hmm. But he is there, he's seeing it moving, and he tells it to stop, and then that's when the grabber just kind of jump scares again, saying, "Stop what?" And he's just sitting there watching him. Finn tells him that he's hungry, he needs food. And then the grabber says, "Well, I can't bring you any right now." And he asks why. Would the person upstairs see me? And he's kind of getting upset at this point. And he just says, like, no, it's just not how. He shuts the door. And then we cut to Finn again, sleeping. This kid sleeps a lot. I know he's, like, trapped. But, like, even before, like, he passed out watching horror movies at home. He passed out at, like, this kid's always being woken up. Yeah, right? He wakes up again, the phone, and he answers it this time, and he says that he needs help, but it's just kind of a static sound. And just as we think it's going to, like, just cut dry, a distorted voice says, "Finney," and he hangs it up quickly and kind of rushes to the other back wall, and it rings again. He picks it up, hangs it up, and then walks away, and this time it rings a third time, but this time it doesn't like ring, ring. It just a constant like ring. It doesn't stop until he picks it up.
So it's obviously like the spirit
trying to get his attention.
Trying to get his attention, making it ring.
They say that the person he picks it up and the person says, "Don't hang up." They say they don't remember their name and it's the first thing that they lose. He asks how he knows his name. He says that they met once and that his arm is mint. And that he almost had him. So obviously this is a callback to the first scene of Bruce. This is Bruce, obviously.
You know what? I'll correct myself in a second.
Okay.
Continue.
He keeps saying that his arm is mint, which is weird because like these phone calls, you'll find out that they give advice and then they repeat random lines a lot throughout what they're saying, even if it doesn't make sense. So it kind of throws you off a little bit from that point. But he says that the phone never rang for any of them, but he heard it and the grabber hears it too. But again, he just says his arm is mint.
But the question is, does he actually hear it too? Because they don't really give it away that he does or he doesn't. I don't think till maybe the very end, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and even at the end, they don't directly give it away, but it's
right.
implied.
It's implied that he hears it. I do want to correct myself. I got to go back a few seconds. So I said Heart-Shaped Box by Edgar Allan Poe. I actually meant A Telltale Heart. Sorry.
Okay. Heart-Shaped Box, Nirvana.
Heart-Shaped Box is Nirvana, but it's also a Joe Hill short story collection or a book. Sorry, it's a novel. So that is my fault. I apologize for anybody that was screaming at "You're an idiot, you're wrong." So I'm sorry. I apologize for that. But I do want to tie in though is when he first talks to, at least I think in the movie, I know in the short story it's like this, and I think Joe Hill is actually not tying something in from this to from something else to this, but he uses this in another novel he writes later in his career. But the idea that the kids have crossed over, I guess, in a way.
Yeah.
But they don't know who they are. Like they
you kind of like
their name.
And like they said, it's the first thing you lose. So probably I'm assuming like when you die, the first thing that happens is you lose your name, you lose your identity.
So what I think is awesome is that in another book by Joe Hill, Nosferatu, which is another great story if anybody is feeling reading it or if you want to watch something, they made a miniseries of it and put it on Shudder. So check one of those two things out. But I think in that story as well, all of the kids that are abducted by the bad guy in Nosferatu, Charlie Manx, he brings them to his like Christmas Wonderland place, which is kind of like the afterlife in a way, or like his own version of hell. And I believe that the kids there forget their names too. So I think it's like kind of like one of those things where he's tying in across multiple stories, kind of like how his dad does. Like when you read Stephen King stuff, like it all ties into each other. You hear about characters from different stories in different books. So I think it's kind of cool he does that. And I think in the movie he uses it too. It's not as explicit. I think, like you said, I think Bruce says it's the first thing you lose is your name or whatever. Yeah. But the idea that like you lose your identity when you cross over.
Yeah. But then it cuts to shots of Bruce getting taken. And we're back to that old film style. So it's like that real style.
We're going back to that like home movie.
Yeah. So it's different shots of like Bruce as a kid hitting baseballs, stuff like that. But then we get a shot of Finn inside of a locked house screaming for help. And then Gwen wakes up. And that is just kind of, it shows us that was probably her dream.
Yep.
So she goes on a bike ride to kind of look for that house. She only got really was like the door front. And that was really it.
And this is basically, and again, not to go back in time, but like when you asked about the short story and her, this is basically what's described in the book or in the story for the most part, is just her having that weird dream and taking her bike and finding the street with the house on it. So that scene in the movie is kind of where it's described for the most part in the book as how she has powers. So I think that's kind of cool how they tied that in together.
Yeah.
I made him lose his place.
Yeah, I did. I lost my notes. We cut back. So he's back on the phone now still. And he tells him that there's a loose tile and that he started digging to get out, but he kind of ran out of time. So it kind of shows us now Finn is going to be digging through this hole. He's kind of moved the tile, and as he's doing it, it's pretty smart. He's taking the dirt, flushing it down the toilet, so there's not like any signs of him digging it. Yeah. And then he covers up the big hole with rugs that were laying in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Again, Finn is awoken, staring at the door, kind of waiting. The grabber comes down, saying he made him some breakfast, and Finn asks him, "What did he put in it?"
What's in it?
And he says, "Salt and pepper." and starts laughing. Like, okay, like he's like,
It's
why
so
would?
good.
Yeah, it's just
so
simple.
good.
He says, like, why would I need to drug you? You're already here.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
okay.
And you're like, well, okay then. Yeah, you're
He's-
right.
true.
There's zero reason for him to drug him.
But-
I think it's the genius of the Hawk character is that like he is kind of like naive in a way.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he is the one with the power, at least at the moment. So it's kind of like it's a contrast or a dichotomy of two different things. Like you've got the dude who has the power because he's obviously abducted this child, brought him to a basement, and he's locked him in the basement, and the child can't do anything about that. But at the same time, his character and his personality is of like himself a naive child.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really kind of weird how that kind of plays with each other, and then obviously kind of the roles swap a little bit near the end, but or at least the climax of the movie kind of swaps those roles.
Yeah.
But I think that's the genius of his character is that it feels like he's soft in a way, like he's delicate, even though he's a fucking murderous abductor.
There's something off about him. He's almost a
super
child.
weird.
He has like a childish mind almost, it feels like.
Well, that's exactly it. Yeah, I think it feels almost like he's got that mind of a child.
But he says he doesn't need to drug him. He leaves the food on the floor, but doesn't lock the door. And Finn starts to go to the door because he notices that he never sent that like last latch.
Right.
But just as he was gonna hit it and open, the phone rings.
Phone rings.
So he picks it up, and it's a new voice now telling him not to go up the stairs. It's a trap. He asks if this is Bruce, but he says no, he doesn't know a Bruce. And then there's a quick jump scare again here to show the dead kid talking to him right behind him.
Yeah.
And it was cool because they kept his, the kid was standing
voice
next to
is
him
still
talking to
through
him,
the phone,
but it was
yeah.
through the phone, which is cool.
I think as for me, and again, that was the only thing that I didn't like. I didn't necessarily enjoy the fact that they had the actual like kids in the room with them.
And like sometimes they did because Bruce was the only one I think that wasn't actually. Once we got
Bruce
through
was
them.
the only one I think that wasn't in it. And again, I don't think it takes away from the movie. For me, it wasn't exactly
Needed.
It was probably the one thing that I was like,
Yeah.
don't really need that.
But it's I guess it's Billy the Paperboy.
Yes.
He ends up
Who's a new character.
Finn ends up knowing who he was, or he heard about him. But he warns him again: do not go upstairs. The grabber's waiting upstairs with the belt, and he'll beat you until you pass out. So
Yeah.
Finn does end up going through the door, and he walks slowly up the stairs. But as he approaches the top, he kind of thinks against it, retreats, and then the camera does pan over to seeing Ethan Hawke sitting there
With the shirt off.
shirtless with the belt in hand,
Weird, like,
waiting.
50-plus-year-old
Looking kind of big though.
Yeah, he's a little bit.
He's
but
been working the
definitely-
chest.
He's got
That's
that.
the dad bod.
He's got that beard. Yeah, he's got the dad bod beer gut. The ones that we all.
It looks like the
struggle
dude
with.
that was like jacked at 30,
Yeah.
stopped lifting weights but didn't lose his
Yeah.
shape.
It
And
was
he like
interesting.
kept the
I was
top
like,
and
oh,
lost the
alright.
bottom.
We're gonna make him look normal.
Yeah. But Finn goes back downstairs, shuts the door behind him, and starts eating the eggs.
So that's kind of where this is what's starting to bother Ethan Hawke's character is that he's not playing the game like Ethan Hawke wants him to.
Yep.
This is the game that he's played with every victim so far. Or at least they're giving off that vibe. It's,
Yeah. Which goes back
you're
to the line of
supposed
him
to.
saying like everything's fucked up.
Right,
Or like
you're not. Yeah, you're supposed to not. This isn't supposed to be this way. You're supposed to like, be just falling into my traps or whatever. Because it's obvious. They haven't given it away, but it's obvious that the door was left open for a reason. It
Yeah.
wasn't like a mistake. He was trying to lure him upstairs to beat the shit out of him.
Yeah, but Gwen is at school sleeping. She's woken up, and the teacher tells her to go to the nurse. Just a quick little cut scene, but it goes back
Most
now.
of this
It's a
movie
Finn.
is quick cut.
Yeah, I feel like the closer we get towards the end, the more it jumps back and
Yeah,
forth.
well,
The end
100%.
obviously goes back and forth between like 3 different things, but we're back to Finn, and he's woken up by the black phone again. It's Billy again, and he moves the glass. He starts moving the glass around and points it to the window. He eventually tells him that he tore a large cord or a cable loose, and he kind of hid it back there, but Finn can use that to get up to the window.
Yes.
Now we cut back to Gwen, who's now dreaming again of Billy. Quick little shots of him on his paper route, then he gets taken. But this time, she sees the whole house with the grabber standing there with the balloons, the top hat, just kind of laughing. There's no address, but like she has more of the house besides just the door to go off of now.
Right.
Back to Finn. He gets the cable loose and attaches it to the grate at the front of the window. This is a long scene. physics I don't think apply to the scene because he like ropes the cable up through but whatever. At the end of the day,
convenient.
he ends up getting the cable around the grate in front of the door and pulls himself up. But as he's pulling himself up, the cable doesn't snap, but the grate pulls out of the window, slamming him down.
Yeah.
And this was my first moment that I was like, okay, this kid's fucking dumb. Why didn't, like, the grate seems like it would have been the hard part. You know, like, now it's just the window. Can he not break the window? I mean...
The question is, can he get up to the window?
Which we saw earlier, he was jumping, and his fingers were just on the window. So I feel like if you took all the rugs or the carpets and stacked them, like, it gives you that extra... Obviously, you don't have the cable to, like, pull yourself up anymore, but I feel like it's within range that he could have just got out through that little window.
So we haven't gotten to some of it near the end of the movie yet. I think there is reasons why he is the way he is. Obviously, he's a kid. Like, I mean, we put anybody in this situation, they're not going to think straight. So as a kid, it's even more so. Like, the fact that he's staying as calm as he is, and he slowly breaks down a little bit as the movie goes on, but I can see why he jumps at things. Like the minute he kind of realized what they were talking about, he was like, oh yeah, so he went and did pulled the grate out of the window, it slammed him, and I think didn't hit him in the head.
I think he just hit his head on the way down, and it kind of slammed next to him.
Third moment in this movie where it's like, that kid should be dead.
Yeah.
But either way.
But now we get to a scene where Gwen is going to her father, who is, again, drinking alone, and she asks him a question, and she makes him promise that he won't get mad, and she wants to talk about her dreams, and he's visibly upset, but, like, he's, okay, let's talk about it. So he's kind of... This is a scene that I saw going one way, and it kind of went the other way, thankfully. But she asks him, you know, that, like, what if her dreams were real? What if they could help them find Finn? Like, isn't it worth going down that route? But this is where we do find out that, you know, the father goes on this barrage of...
He explains that their mother did the same thing, or she claimed to have seen.
She heard things, she saw things, but then those things started to tell her to do terrible things, and that's why she took her own life.
Right.
And he doesn't want her to have that life. Apparently, her life of having an abusive, drunk piece of shit father is much better. So, sure.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair on his side, I mean, his wife committed suicide, so now he's like literally like
he'll have to pick up the pieces.
He's living with that on top of having to raise his kids by himself.
Yeah.
Keep them from getting in trouble and that sort of thing. So I can understand why he's a little broken up and getting sauced all the time.
Yeah.
Like, that would make me want to get sauced all the time. But I am happy that they left it at that.
Yeah.
I felt like at that point they were getting a little too much into the weeds with it. Like I was like, please stop there. Like, don't give us too much backstory. I mean, I like the fact that the little girl has some sort of supernatural power. It fits the story. It adds some mysteriousness to it. But, you know, okay, fine. The mother, you know, she had the same type of thing. She committed suicide, and her dad's like trying to keep the little girl from falling down the same path. Just leave it at that. And they did. And they definitely didn't really go much further into it, or any more into it than they had to. Because once you start going too far into stuff like that, then it becomes a little like, all right, now you're adding way too much.
Yeah.
It's an hour and 40 movie. Like, you don't need to go into that much detail. I mean, it's better off that it's kind of mysterious and it leaves us with, you know, questions. Like, that's what I love about movies. It's like, you know, that will make you think and ask questions after it ends. Like, all right, so what was that about? Did she really have magical powers? Was it just something she was thinking she had?
Yeah. Who knows?
Who knows? That's what I like better. So
for the
I'm
viewer
glad
to
they
decide.
kind of left it like that. But at least it gave us, you know, some additional reasons to be like, all right, so her dad's not quite as big of an asshole as you think he is. I mean, yeah, he's not doing things the right way. He's kind of, you know, he's I guess through today's lenses, the discipline is
he'd be arrested.
Yeah, I mean, but like, not justifying that type of action, but at least there's a reason why he's a drunk and he's
not just
struggling and falling apart. It's not just that he's a stereotypical piece of shit.
Yeah, just
like,
for being
he's a piece of shit, but he has reasons to be a piece of shit.
Yeah.
I guess that's my point.
Yeah, but so we do finish the scene where Gwen and her father are driving around, seemingly looking for that house. Yeah. So he kind of did cave and
like, all right,
gave her a little bit.
It makes. I mean, we probably should try it. Another great scene of the two of them together.
Yeah, and I think
those
it's
two
like
work well.
I obviously I can't say I know, but I think that he's not bought in on it, but he knows that it will make her feel better. So at least he like takes her for the ride to, make an effort at least to make her feel a little bit of positivity. But then the police pull up to a house, and we are now introduced to Max, who is played by who you brought, James Ransom. He was in It Chapter 2. He was the older version of Eddie, and he was also the cop in Sinister 1 and 2, I think it was. And this guy is a squirrely man. He is all over the place.
The coke,
he is coked out of his mind. The cops are just the cops are just surveying the town, showing pictures, seeing if they see anything. And he brings them on. He's like, no, come here, look at this. Shows them the whole map. He's like, look, all the abductions have been here, and here. They've been walking home from school. That means that this grabber has to have a driveway, a garage. He has to live in this radius.
Yeah,
well, he has it all mapped out.
This is kind of like the one and only gotcha of the movie.
Yeah.
In the sense that they want you to think that the cops are gonna think that it's him.
Yeah.
Obviously, as the audience, we know that it isn't.
It's not him. Yeah.
But the idea where it's like, oh, they're gonna arrest him or whatever, and that's kind of the cops are like, they don't take him serious.
No, not at all.
Just like this guy's.
They kind of dismiss him. They're like, all right, he says that he's in between jobs. He's living.
Yeah.
He's not. This isn't his house. He's living with his brother. And they're like, all right, well, if you see anything, let us know. He's like, oh, if I get any more leads, new leads.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, dude. Also, you might want to clean up before your brother gets home. And he looks to the table, and there's just lines of coke. He's like, oh, shit. And then he just starts blowing lines. And then from there, it's a pan-down zoom to show, it seems that Finn is in that same basement. Right. I don't know if it's meant to show you that or not, but that's what it is. I don't know if it's fully lifting the veil off of you, but I saw it as blatantly.
The door is the same.
Yeah. So it goes down and shows the wood infrastructure of the flooring down to the basement where we are now shown Finn. The lights come on and he pretends to be asleep. And then the grabber comes in with a tray once again and Finn starts to plead with him, like, please let him go. He says that. And the grabber goes, yeah, it's weird. This time everything is just different. Nothing's going right, which obviously nothing's going right because Finn hasn't been playing the game of going upstairs, but he asks him what his name is, and then this is where Finn lies. I think he says his name is Taylor or something. And then the grabber, obviously, his emotions immediately change. He drops the tray and throws a newspaper at him. Finn opens the newspaper to see a picture of his face, and he's like, he talks about, he's like, man, I was so close to letting you go, Finny. He was just pissed that the kid lied to him. Obviously, he probably wasn't going to let him go, but just a little game of cat and mouse there. But he leaves and again doesn't lock the door. And again, as Finn starts to walk towards it, the phone rings, but it hangs up. And then the grabber, we see him in the kitchen again, waiting for Finn to come upstairs, but he's starting to kind of doze off a little bit. Finn's now sleeping again. And he hears a slow drip, and he shines his light looking for it. And then this is another jump scare, and then all of a sudden, as his light moves across the room, we see a kid's body floating in the air and kind of contorted and dripping blood on the floor. And this is the sound that he heard. The kid's body just points to the phone, and he picks it up, and then the body is gone. So it was cool, and we'll find out why I think it was cool in a second, but the phone didn't ring. And I think the reason why the phone didn't ring is because we didn't want to wake up the grabber who was upstairs,
right? Who
also supposedly hears the phone. So smart on them. He tells him that he doesn't have much time and the grabber hasn't been sleeping. He thinks his brother might figure it out soon. So at this point, we're like, okay, this is definitely the same house. He tells him that he hasn't killed him because he hasn't played the game Naughty Boy. And he can't kill him until he does. He can't. The grabber needs to win. If he doesn't win, he can't move on to the next part of the game.
Which is why the grabber is frustrated.
Yeah.
He's like,
that's why nothing's going right. Everything's fucked up. He's not. This kid is not playing the fucking game. But he tells him that he's not sleeping again and that he's passed out now in the chair. He noticed the door is still unlocked. He's like, it is unlocked. It's still unlocked, even though he's sleeping. And he tells him that he has to go upstairs, but there's a lock on the door, and the lock used to be Griffin's bike lock. And the kid, obviously, because they forget everything, he forgot the number for the lock. But he did say that he carved it into the wall, and he did. So, but of course, now whether it's 2, 23, 31, or whatever. Like there's various numbers, and they didn't remember which one it is. So he has to try. He has to try all of them. So he does. He slowly makes his way upstairs in a very tense scene. He walks around, or walks right in front of Ethan Hawke's character, who is sleeping but still kind of nodding his head, snorting, stuff like that. And he goes through the different combinations. He doesn't get it until the very last one, of course, because why would that just be so easy for him? But he finally does get it, and then the dog barks, awakening the grabber. Finn, at that point, has the door open. He rushes outside and starts running up the street, but we see the grabber get into his van, drive up the street. He cashes up to him, tackles him, and they're on the ground, and then lights on different houses start to go on. But at that point, the grabber takes a knife out and puts it to his throat and says he'll gut him right here and strangle him with his own intestines if he makes a sound. And then the lights go back off, and it's like, man, part number 2 where I fucking didn't like Finn. Like, you should have been able to make up enough ground. You should have been able to hide. You should have been able to, you should have been, at that point, he should have been gone. He was out. He should have been gone.
Especially with dad bod Ethan Hawke over here.
Yeah, like, and from the cuts, like, he was outside of the house before Ethan Hawke realized what had happened. Right. He was still kind of groggy, waking up. And on top of that, Ethan Hawke had to go find his keys, then run to his car, back out of the driveway, chase up. But then at that point, it seemed like Finn had gone like 10 feet from the house. So I was like, man, he should have booked it into the, like, right through the backyard into the woods.
Yeah, they wanted to do that.
Hide
they
somewhere.
Would have been better off having him, like, do the cliche bang on a door and the neighbor doesn't open or whatever.
Yeah, and then get taken there.
Kid, get out of here.
Yeah.
I'm going to call the cops. Go away. That type of thing. And then he catches up to him. But
that was the other part. But then the grabber finally kind of won because he says, like, oh, nighty night, naughty boy, and then knocks him out.
He got the naughty boy out of him. Which
he finally got the naughty boy.
That was kind of the point of the whole scene.
But then now we cut to Gwen, who is at home and opens up her dollhouse another time.
And this time she goes off.
And this is my third favorite. This is my third of my favorite scenes. She opens the door, goes, Jesus, what the fuck? I mean, what the fuck? Seriously, what the hell is wrong with you? And she's like, you're giving me these clues and they don't mean anything. And now I wake up and I have no dream. This was just the dialogue between her and Jesus is like, amazing.
Fuck you, Jesus.
Yeah. What the fuck? Well, we cut right from there to Finn kind of waking up again to the voice. From the phone was ringing and he wakes up and it's a new voice. This one's angry and he tells him that this is his nightmare. It's his end to his pathetic life. And Finn remembers him as a kid named Vance, who, much like the Billy the Paperboy, we had no seeing of Vance before this scene.
This is the first time we've heard of him.
But Vance used to scare the shit out of him. We cut now to a flashback scene again, which is that film-like reel, which at this point we can now assume that this is a dream of Gwen's. This Billy lookalike from Stranger Things was playing pinball. He's the rambunctious time, I guess. But he's playing pinball. Some kid fucks up his score, and he tackles him, fights him in the 7-Eleven or wherever they are, and carves 7741 into his arm. He's then arrested, and as he's getting arrested, Gwen walks out from behind the cop car and sits in the back seat with him. So no one can really see her, but then the police radio kicks on, and it's Finn's voice. Yeah. So Finn is talking to Vance in this like weird little realm, and Vance is talking through the police radio. The scanner, and then Gwen wakes up, and she's in the bath. We're back to the grabbers now, and then Vance is telling him that he hasn't tried everything yet. Vance, he said that the grabbers pissed his shit when he saw what Vance did. He had to put he had to put a bunch of money into it. But essentially what he tells him is that there's a little section of the wall next to the bathroom that if you smash through, there's a freezer. And if you do it at the right part, you can unscrew the back of the freezer and you can make it into the storage room. And then we get a scene where Vance is now in the room with him, and he's yelling at him that this isn't about helping Finn. This is about the grabber. Like, fuck him! And he gets pulled into like this dark abyss, which is like a pretty cool scene compared to the other kid scenes being there. But Finn now uses the top of the toilet seat to kind of smash into the wall. He does reach the freezer. This kid's like a little MacGyver. As stupid as he is for not going out the window and running in the right direction, he is smart that he undoes all the little rods and stuff inside the back of the toilet, finds like a washer, and uses the side of it as a coin almost to unscrew that latch.
It's kind of weird. This is the scene we see him kind of just break down, and it's like, you remember, all right, the audience realizes, he is just a kid.
A kid,
like, he's doing everything he can. He's listening to what they're telling him, but everything just doesn't seem to work. Mm-hmm. And obviously, this turns out to be the same thing. It doesn't work.
Yeah. So he gets the panel open, and he gets into the freezer full of steaks, and he goes to kick it open, but it doesn't. You can't open it. It's one of those latch doors. Right. So obviously you can't get it. So he's defeated. He crawls out and he starts crying, and then the phone rings. But then this time, it's Robin. Yeah. So this is his knight in shining armor. He comes through. He tells him to stop crying, and that he can see him. He knows he's crying. But this is the day that he had told him about. Not that he needs to see Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but he tells him that he needs to stand up for himself. Right. He said that he can see him, and friends never leave friends behind. He says that they're both fighters. Finn never threw a punch, but he knew how to take one, and he was always getting back up. He reminds him he doesn't want to die for nothing. He needs to die knowing that he at least helped his friend. Right. Robin is... Those kids are dead. There's no helping them. They're not coming back. But he wants to at least know that on his way out, he helped his buddy Finn one last time. He tells him to take the phone and pack it full of dirt, take a couple steps back, swing. And they do this over repetition, so he gets it down.
They practice
They have a little Rocky montage scene there. But he tells him that, well, will I be able to talk to anybody? He says, no, this is the last call, and it's all him from here on out. And he tells him that he needs to get out for him and use what they gave him. So that was like a little, okay, we'll see what that line has to do with things.
It's real Home Alone-ish from this point on.
Yeah, it does. We're now to Gwen, who's riding her bike looking around, and she's dressed in a bright yellow raincoat, which, of course, homage to Georgie. This was a good jump scare that worked for me, too. Lightning struck, and then right as it struck, there's all the dead kids. She skids out, falls off her bike, but then looks up and sees that she's right in front of the house. 7741, that's the house that she saw in her dream. She rushes home, finds the police card, and calls them. This is where stuff gets really fast and heavy with multi-cuts. Oh, wow, we really sped through this movie. Okay, because we kind of caught... For a while, we were right on track with what was going on, but now we're back a little bit, which is perfect. So I didn't want to do a 2-hour podcast tonight.
Yeah, well, the movie doesn't.
It picks up pretty quick from here.
It does pick up pretty quick. It kind of not that it's slow in the beginning, but it definitely builds and builds and builds. And
there's a lot of steps.
Hits this point, and it's like this is where the climax kind of hits us. This is where it starts to get fast.
Yep, that's literally what I just said in my note right here. I have the climax is about to come.
Yeah.
So it's Gwen rushes to the room, finds the card, and then it cuts to the grabber who's out and about doing errands, and it looks like he's getting like a cement bag or dirt bag or something like that.
Yeah.
Then it cuts to Max, who's still doing cocaine, but he's staring at the map this time. And then it cuts to the police, who are kind of getting the whole station up, and they're rushing out of the office. So we know that, Gwen's doing her thing, the grabber's out doing his thing, Max is here, the police are here. We know it's about to just, collide with one another. But Max, this is where it kind of starts. He's slowly realizing that his brother's house is right in the area that he suspected the grabber to be living. So he goes to the basement door, kind of hesitant, not wanting to believe it. Mm-hmm. He walks away, but then he goes in and he opens it. And then we see Finn is down there in the basement, and the lights start to go. The black phone starts to kind of pulsate to let him know that so-and-so's coming. So he picks up the phone and puts his little rocket light thing up there because it's letting him know that somebody's coming down the stairs. But yeah, so he opens the door, and then there's Max. He was like, no fucking way. He was like, I knew he was hiding something down here, but I didn't think it was this. Oh man, that's so weird, man. And then
you're okay.
He's like, you're okay. Do you want me to tell you how I found you? And he's like, no, stop. And then he's like, he's gonna hear. He's like, no, don't worry, man. My brother's at work. He's gone. Let me tell you. And then and then it goes to Finn going like, no. And then you see Ethan Hawke coming down the stairs and just fucking slams him in the top of the head with an axe.
And this is another one that's pulled directly from the short story. This is exactly how it happens in the short story.
Yeah. So the grabber's super upset now. He's blaming this on Finn. Like, you made me kill my brother. He was an idiot, but he was my idiot. So and then he's just there. So then the police show up to the house, and Gwen's had met them there. She's sure that this is the house from her dream. She's never seen this house before. So they start to knock on the door. We go back to the grabber, and he tells him that normally he would use a knife, but he's special. So he's going to take his time. He wants him to feel the pain. He tells him to put the phone down. It doesn't work. Finn's still holding onto the phone that he had packed. The grabber then calls Samson down the stairs. There's this big, intimidating dog.
Animated dog.
Looks like a mastiff of some sorts. But he ties him up to the corner to like a little chain collar. We cut back to the police who are starting to raid the house, and there's nothing there. It's an empty house. It's clean. Nobody's there. Now we're down to the grabber, who takes the axe in hand and swings at Finn. But Finn, at the last minute, you said Home Alone-y, ducks the axe, runs to the corner, and like hops over the hole he had been digging.
Pulling the cable out from the wall.
Yeah, so he goes there, jumps over the hole, and then as the grabber runs by, he pulls the cable straight, so it trips the grabber. The grabber falls forward into the hole that he had been digging that has the grate down there now at an angle. So the grabber hits it, snaps his ankles, and now he's stuck in there. So now we're seeing that line of Robin saying, use what we gave you.
Yep.
So we're starting to see that all the little things that we thought were attempts to get out were actually building tools to take him down. Battle. At this point, Finn starts, doing take the 2 steps back and swing. 2 steps back, swing. So he's just beating the shit out of the guy, the grabber, and he eventually breaks his mask off, and that's when the grabber's like, oh, freaks out. I guess he doesn't want him to see his face, but at this point, like, he's just getting smoked by this 14-year-old kid with a phone. So I don't think that would have been my first reaction, be like upset about the mask. So Finn at this point jumps over, taking the cord, putting it around Ethan Hawke's neck and putting it behind his back and like really strangling him. And then the phone rings. And that's the part where we talked about earlier where it looks as if the grabber realizes the phone's ringing. Right. So he does hear the phone ring, and he knows now that Finn hears it because he says that this is for you. He holds the phone up to the grabber's ear, and this is all the parts of dialogue that didn't seem to fit in the advice that the kids were giving. Right. But they were actually messages for the grabber. Like it was Bruce saying, Finn's arm is mint. Or like, today's the day, motherfucker. And it's just like these little bits that were, there's not much time now. It's these little bits of dialogue that were in the advice that didn't fit. But now you're like, gotcha. Yeah. Makes sense. It all comes together. So he finally snaps the grabber's neck, pulls him back. And we're kind of just left there. We cut back to the police who are now in the house. They're about to leave, but then they find a hidden basement door, and they go down, and that's where they find all the burial plots for all the missing kids. They say, he must kill them somewhere. These must be the bodies, whatever. Finn now just has to get through the dog who's just staring at him, barking at him. He goes into the freezer, takes out one of the raw steaks, throws it to the dog, distracts the dog, walks up the stairs, and at this point is kind of home scot-free. As he opens the door, the police are still coming out of the other house, but he sees Gwen sitting there. They hug each other, they embrace, and that's kind of the end. We do get a little bit of conclusion at the end of like a news crew saying that the madness in this town is over. They had found that the grabber had actually owned 2 properties, one across the street. So the address that she had been seeing was where the kids were, not where Finn was being held. Maybe she has that, like we said, that connection to the dead. She can't connect to anybody in the dead in the other house.
Well, that's where he was burying the bodies.
Yeah. So that's who she was connecting with. So, whew, that was The Black Phone. What'd you think about that one?
It's a good movie. I mean, like I said the last time we talked about it, it wasn't anything that it wasn't like mind-blowingly like game-changing.
Super original, yeah.
But it was a good movie. I liked it. It was faithful to the short story in a way, but it also did its own thing. Mm-hmm. Like we said, they had to find a way to take a 20-page short story and stretch it out to fit a feature-length movie. Yeah. And I think they did a good job doing that. Mm-hmm. I think that it wasn't blatantly obvious that it felt like there was filler. Yeah. I don't think anything in this movie was filler. I felt like it all kind of worked together. It fits.
Hour 40 is quick nowadays for movies.
Oh, well, considering they release Marvel movies that are 2.5 hours, 3 hours. So yeah, an hour and 40 is chump change compared to what comes out of Hollywood now. But I think it worked. I think it was interesting. It wasn't like I said, it wasn't a horror movie specifically, but it was just like more of a thriller with horror elements. Yep. But they all worked. And like I said, all the jump scares worked for the most part. I mean, in the sense that, like, you don't expect them. Obviously, if you're someone like me, jump scares don't really make you jump as much as you think they would. But if they catch you off guard, that's what they're designed to do. So they did pretty good with those in this one. I have really no complaints about that. And the only thing that I think the only thing that I didn't like I said, was the characters of the actual dead kids showing up in the room.
Yeah.
Other than that, I mean, and I get why they did it. I prefer.
Could have done without it, just being the voice through the
I
phone.
prefer just the voices, but that's just me.
Some stuff I didn't point out, I don't think, was the masks were designed by Tom
we didn't say
Savini.
it. Yep, Tom Savini.
So that was really cool. The black and white film that Finn was watching in the beginning was actually The Tingler from 1959. So if they didn't really hold up in that scare sequence, that's why, because it was from the 50s. So now, what do you think? How do you think this is going to translate? Like, what do you think we're going to see in a house from this movie?
So this one,
it's tough.
I honestly think we're only going to get one room that is the actual room with the phone in it.
Yeah.
I think we'll get a scene that's like simulated outdoors with the van and the balloons. I think for the most part the scare actors are all going to be Ethan Hawke scare actors, obviously, with the different
I think
masks.
so. Yeah. That's a fairly safe bet, I'd say.
Yeah, but I think you'll probably get one scene in the room, one scene of him sitting in the chair, seemingly asleep.
Yeah.
Like I said, outdoors with the van at some point. There'll be a few things. Because it's mixed with Freaky, they don't have to do as much.
It can be kind of like a best of from the movie. It's not gonna be a cohesive story. I do hope there's a scene. I do hope that we get a scene with the van and like a character of Ethan Hawke like in the magician makeup holding the balloons. I would hope that would be the intro to the that portion of the house. And then as far as the other scenes, maybe there's a Max character that does get whacked as a scare. I don't. Might be a little bit tougher to do. It might, like you said, just be Finn and the grabber. Maybe Finn's not even involved. Maybe they don't want to portray the children aspect of it. Might just be the grabber. I do think we're going to be in the basement a little bit. But it does intrigue me a lot to see how they're going to, because when there's a house like this that I don't know exactly how they're going to translate. I see the character, I see the aesthetics, the balloon, the van, and stuff like that. It's tough to bring that into a full house.
We haven't done our hype list yet. I will probably tell you that, like, as of right now, it's not going to be super high on my hype list, only because I think they're good movies. I just struggle with how they're going to translate to a house. Yeah. And again, I'm interested to see how they make that work. But I think as of right now, I think my hype list is on it's pretty low, just because I don't really know a whole lot about how the house itself yet. How are they going to do it? Is it going to be one movie and then the other movie? Are they going to mix them together in some way? Because it's only 2 movies. Yeah. In a compilation house, so. But yeah, I'm interested to see how they make it work. Yeah. Because there really isn't a whole lot in this movie as far as set pieces are concerned.
No, I mean, we are in the basement for the most part.
Yeah.
And that's where it's going to take place.
In a basement.
So that kind of wraps up that. So should we get to the big news that I was teasing at the beginning? Because this is kind of the end of our spiel.
Why don't we give our ratings?
Oh, duh. I forgot about our fear and beer ratings. Forgot about that. So why don't you go first? Why don't you explain the rating? Because I'm going to open my notes. So
so the rankings, for those that don't remember, I mean, it's been a while since we've done the killer reviews. We have a fear rating, which is how either Nick and myself or Kevin, we have Kevin on it, how we rank the frights and the spooks in the movie. Like, is it scary? Is it not scary? How scary is it? And then we do our beer ranking, which is like our general, just how much we liked the movie. So for me, my fear rating, I'll give it a 3. It's not like the scariest thing I've ever seen. Again, it's not specifically a horror movie, but for a lot of generic horror movies, this was actually scarier than a lot of those ones. Yeah. Only in the sense that, like, I think Ethan Hawke's character is really, 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 really creepy. I think he does a great job giving off Stranger Danger vibes. Yeah. It's not very mysterious for a thriller, but it's not supposed to be. I think it's supposed to be pretty straightforward. And you're supposed to kind of see how these characters react to the situation that they're in. But I thought that it was relatively scary. I think the jump scares, I said, again, are, they all worked. I think they all did what they were supposed to do. I think the only jump scare I wasn't crazy about was the dripping kid. Other than that, the other ones were great. So if you're someone that gets spooked by those easily, this is going to work for you. But yeah, I'll give it a 3. Maybe it's a little high. I don't know, but that's just where I'm going.
Yeah, for my fear rating, I'm going to give it a 2.5. Okay, so we're right around the same ballpark. There was a couple jump scares that was really really it. This is not like a super scary movie. Definitely, they call it thriller horror. It's definitely much more thriller than horror. But yeah, and then I'll kick off my beer rating. I gave it a 3.5. I do enjoy this movie. It's not something I like super love. It's kind of just above the middle for me. But it's good. It was, the simplicity of it worked for me. It doesn't need to be something that was drowned out with nonsense or expounded upon. It's a simple story of this kid being kidnapped. These various dead kids before him helped him out. And then at the end, it all makes sense as to the different tasks he was kind of put at hand to do.
Yeah, and I think I'm kind of right along the same lines as you. I'm giving it a 3 for my beer rating. Not the best Blumhouse movie. I think there's other Blumhouse movies that are better, more original, more unique. But I am letting my opinion of Joe Hill as an author color my opinion a little bit. So that's on me. I think that the short story was better in the sense that it was really it was short, it was simple, to the point. He didn't dwell on too much in it other than what was going on. I do think that this movie does, in a way, in certain aspects, give you more than they should have. Again, to reiterate what I said earlier, I think that dwelling too much on Gwen's powers, I think, was a little bit of a detriment to the movie. I don't think it hurt it considerably, but enough that I wasn't going to give this movie a 4 or 5. I think a 3. Right in the middle, solid, good movie, worth a watch, worth a movie ticket. Maybe never pick it up again and watch it again. I don't know if I'll ever watch this again, to be honest.
After watching it 4 times in a row, I mean, I'm sure I'll get
it 4 times. But I've only watched it once.
Yeah, I watched it in theaters. I watched it the other night, and then I watched it again today. And I feel like watching it up here and reviewing it again is almost like watching it a 4th time.
Yeah, it's one of those movies that it's good. I probably won't go back to it, just because. I just think it was good for what it's good for what it is. It's a good movie, just not one that I have to make a routine of.
Yeah,
watching. I don't watch a lot of movies over and over again unless they are super top tier. Love these movies, can't get this movie, enough of this movie, that type of thing. So.
Well, that wraps it up. So let's get into this big announcement. And we're only going to give you a couple little breadcrumbs of this one. So, if you're like us, you are excited. HHN is coming.
It's an understatement.
Let's start out with a little bit of bad news.
Oh, boy.
So there's 2 weeks ahead of us where we are only going to release another episode. Depending on when that next Horror Nights announcement comes that's what dictates when our episode will be.
Yeah.
So if the announcement doesn't come next week, we won't see you next week. We'll see you the following week. And that is because we're trying to save up all of our ideas. Starting on, let's make sure I get my dates right. Starting on Friday, August 26th, which is 1 week away from HHN, we are going to be putting out an episode every single day until September 2nd.
Boy.
So we're going to have an episode every day for that week leading up to HHN. So all you fucking nutbags like us have something to listen to, because I know if you're anything like us, you're going to be counting down the days, the hours, the minutes, the seconds till you can get in.
Watching and listening to anything you can find just to get yourself hyped up.
So we got a lot of podcasts ahead of us. Now, these episodes, I will say, some may be shorter than others, some may be longer, because these essentially would have been all different topics of a
full-length episode.
Full 2.5 hour episode. So we're going to branch these off, and we're going to expand on them a little bit. So some episodes might be 30 minutes, some might be 40 minutes, some might be a little bit longer, but we have a little list going. It's very up in the air right now, but we're trying to nail it all down that we have enough stuff to put out for you, an episode every single day, Friday through Friday, leading up to that event. So I think that's pretty cool. We give you all something to listen to.
Yeah.
I'm excited. We got some cool topics to discuss. We got some cool little plans in place. Yeah, and I hope you all enjoyed, because I know the next couple of weeks are going to be a little bit crazy for us doing all this. A lot of editing to be done and a lot of pre-publishing, but I'm excited.
You do all the editing. I won't lie to you. I'm a lazy. I just show up and I talk in a microphone. You're the one who does all that.
That's all right. We'll get our topics in line. We'll get everything placed up. But yeah, so if we get an announcement next week, which I kind of think it's going to be next week, we'll be back on the air next week for you. Yeah, if we don't get an announcement next week, we're going to hold off and we're going to wait. Obviously, this is all contingent upon them actually announcing something. So
Because they haven't dropped anything yet about any of the additional
So
houses.
we just have the 4 houses,
just
that's
the
it.
weekend and the other 3 IPs.
So I'm hoping that, obviously, being a week out from the event on that Friday, I'm hoping by that point we definitely have something to go off of, because we're gonna need that information, or else this plan kind of goes out the chute, or we'll just go off the speculation
we'll just
map.
find something else to talk about.
We'll just base the
another
speculation. Yeah. But yeah, so we'll be back. We're gonna do some cool stuff. But until next time, this is Nick.
And this is Ethan Hawke.
Happy haunts. You fucking fart knockers.
It's cursed. Cursed. It's got a death curse.
You know, it's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare.
And again, I would just like to thank Vampire Stepdad for letting us use his music for our intro and outro music. So if you would, just go check him out. Spotify, Facebook. Again, that is Vampire Stepdad.